everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. It's nice to see so many of you have joined us again for our Sleeping Better webinar. As I said, my name is Emily Gardner and I'm a cognitive behavioural therapist and I work for the NHS in London. And our webinar series, Keeping Well for Health and Care Workers, is well, it's our first round, the first time we've offered this. And we're coming to the end of the 4 episodes. We are also offering a general public wellbeing webinar series called Coping Well During COVID. So some of you may have attended that one. And this series is specifically designed for health and care workers, but some of the techniques may overlap. So if you've already attended the sleep webinar for Coping Well During COVID, then you may notice that some of the techniques are familiar, but we will be going into shift working in a little bit more detail than we touched on in the previous webinar. So hopefully that'll be of use to you. But just wanted to let you know before we started, in case you've already attended that webinar, so that you know that it's going to be similar. Before we get going, we'd really find it useful if you could work out how to use the question and answer function. So we're going to be using this throughout today's webinar to make it as interactive as possible. So if I ask a question during the webinar, then please respond using this function. If I ask you a question, then please respond here. And if you have a question, then please ask it here. So click on the box with the question mark for Q&A. There's an option to enter your name. We recommend that you keep your identity anonymous, and that way we can keep your details confidential. So click the small blue arrow to remain anonymous. If you do want to put a name, then we recommend just adding your first name rather than any other identifiable information. Then enter your question where it says ask a question and click on the arrow to send. Now, if we're asking you to respond to a question, then please still use this part, even though it says ask a question. It can be a bit confusing, but use that part as well anyway. Everything you write will not be published immediately because it needs to be approved by a moderator. And so it may take a few moments to appear. And if you wish to keep your question private for the moderators only, then please add private at the beginning of your question or comment, and then that conversation will remain private. We are going to be unlikely to answer all of your questions, but your responses will really help us to tailor future webinars to suit your needs. And we are hoping to have a bit of a question and answer time at the end of the webinar where you can ask specific questions. So if you're not sure about something that I've shared or said, or you want some specific help on sleep specific areas, then please hold on to them and put them at the end of the webinar, and I can go through as many of those as we have time for. So let's have a go at using this question and answer function now. So where do you work and what is your role? So we'd really like to know in what capacity you're here, and please don't give us too much information, just roughly where you work, what your role is, just to give us an idea of the variety of professions we have here. So that'd be really useful, and I'll come back to your responses in a few moments. Right now, it has been a very trying time. Many of us have been through a roller coaster over the last few months, and we've never been through anything like this before. So we designed this webinar series to the impact of the coronavirus. And the theme of each webinar is different every week, with the view of helping you to understand how you feel and then learn some techniques and strategies to improve the way that you feel. So let's have a look at your responses now and see what your roles are. So hopefully you've had a chance to respond. So we have children's speech and language therapist in Kent. We have registered manager learning disability, alternative provision in school, admin in Uxbridge, outreach and reintegration officer, optometrist, London, in the medical directorate in London, I work as a nurse in Enfield. So we have a really wide range of different health and care working roles here. Family assessment house, sessional worker. Lovely. Thank you so much for coming. I know you're all pretty busy right now, and so taking the time out to attend this webinar, thank you. One, we thank you for coming along, but also you should be grateful to yourself for actually taking the time out to look after yourself in this way, because there are so many other demands on our time. It's easy to prioritise other things. So another chance to use the question and answer. So what do you hope to get out of this webinar today? So if you don't mind taking a few moments just to share your hopes for our webinar, and then I'll come back to those in a few moments. So this series of webinars is designed to provide you with a toolkit of resources, ideas and tools. And these webinars are based on cognitive behavioural therapy, and the idea behind cognitive behaviour therapy is it's looking at the vicious cycles that we can often fall into with the way that we feel, and we make changes to our thought processes and our behaviours with the view of improving our mood. And cognitive behaviour therapy is a very effective treatment for depression and anxiety. So all of our webinars are based on this type of therapy. Today's webinar, we are going to start by understanding sleep, insomnia, and we're going to go through a few sleep statistics and also why we sleep. And then we're going to have a look at a few techniques and strategies which you can use to overcome some of your sleep problems. Now, some of you may be working in shifts, and so we have had a bit of a look at some tips for working in shifts as well, which will be towards the end of the webinar. So let's come to what you hope to gain from this webinar. So I'll come and have a look at your responses now. Okay, so techniques on sleep, brilliant. We're definitely going to give you some of those to sleep better. Now, if you use all of these techniques, by the end of it, you should hopefully be sleeping better. To help my husband who has insomnia, if he doesn't sleep, neither of us sleep. Okay, again, these techniques, whilst you're attending for him, this will benefit you, but you can also share these tips and techniques with him. We're also going to be recording this. Well, we are recording it, so we'll be able to you'll be able to share that with your husband as well, so he can watch the recording. Better and longer sleep, so I'm not so tired all of the time. To focus on improving my bad habits, a good night's sleep. So yes, hopefully all of these hopes for today's webinar will be met at the end of today's webinar. So some of you may have had long-standing sleep difficulties, so it might have been a problem for a really long time, whereas others might have been finding it harder to sleep, or maybe you're waking early, or perhaps you've been having unusual dreams since COVID started. And some people have reported that they have slept longer, but they're feeling less rested. So the changes that we have been through recently, and the amount of pressure and stress that we've been under, naturally our anxiety levels will be higher, our stress levels will be higher, which in turn impact on our ability to sleep. And researchers have said that sleep problems are more common in people who are facing financial difficulties, which might be the case as a result of people being furloughed, for example. So it may be family members who are struggling financially and we're worrying about them, or it might be we are struggling, or a partner has been furloughed or is not working. So we may be having more worries and concerns about finances than usual. And 2 in 5 have reported they're having more vivid dreams than usual as a result of coronavirus. So all of these things may be contributing to the fact that you're not sleeping that well at the moment. And some of you may be really struggling right now and feel like you have nowhere to turn. And we've designed this webinar to be educational and hopefully really helpful for you. But in terms of urgent, immediate support, we wanted you to know where you could turn. So if you are having thoughts of suicide or of harming yourself in any way, then we really want to encourage you to tell someone and don't struggle all alone. The Samaritans are here to listen at any time of day or night, and you can talk to them about anything. So please call them on 116 123. Or alternatively, the Samaritans and the NHS are working together, and they are offering a wellbeing support line for NHS and social and healthcare workers, which is available from 7 AM till 11 PM, 7 days a week. And you can call them free on 0300 131 7000. And the idea behind this support line is to help you so that you can continue looking after others. So please, if you feel like you need extra support, then please use these resources. We're going to paste this into the Q&A. So if you need either of these numbers, please scroll up to the top and you can find the number there. So coming on to sleep and understanding sleep. So in CBT, we use a common sleep cycle that helps us it's a model that helps us to understand what's going on when we're struggling with sleep, and we call this a 5 areas model. We use it in anxiety and depression and other mental health difficulties, but it can be really useful just to help us to break down what's actually going on. And so if we have a look at this example here, in the top part of the model, we have our life events. And so obviously, or life events or situation that we're in. And so at the moment, obviously, we've been through a lot of changes, and it may be that we're finding over and over again, we're lying in bed trying to sleep and sleep's just not coming. And naturally, that's going to impact on our thought processes. So we might start to worry, I'm never going to get to sleep, or I'm bound to have a terrible day tomorrow, or I'll be awake all night and I won't be able to focus. And because we're up, we're worrying, we might start to feel extra tired, we might feel really restless. We may notice more fatigue, low energy, exhaustion, or aches and pains. And we may also notice mental impairments as a result of sleeping difficulties. So things like our attention is impaired, or our memory or concentration can be impacted by lack of sleep. And so then what we do as a result of this is we try to catch up with our sleep during the day. So we might have a nap. We might find that we're snappy and irritable with others, or we may be laying awake in bed at night for hours, not getting to sleep. Or perhaps we're checking or avoiding checking the clock, or we're drinking alcohol to kind of force sleep, or we're drinking stimulants such as coffee and energy drinks to get us through the day. Or perhaps we're reducing our activity after a poor night of sleep because we're unable to function. We feel unable to function as well. And naturally, all of these areas are going to impact on our mood. So we're going to feel more irritable, frustrated. We're going to dread sleep. We're going to feel down and fed up, stressed and worried. And this can turn into a bit of a vicious cycle, in that dread can become quite a habit, in that we start to dread sleep, and then those thoughts are generally quite negative around sleep, which leads to those physical symptoms of anxiety, which makes it even harder to fall asleep when there's adrenaline pumping through our body. So it makes sense why we might fall into this vicious cycle, but it's important to understand that it is a cycle. Break it. And so in today's webinar, we're going to give you some techniques to try and break this cycle. So using the question and answer, we'd really find it helpful to hear from you how much sleep you get each night. So we're going to put all of these options as a comment in the Q&A, and what we'd like you to do is to so click on the thumbs up next to the option that is relevant to you. So choose either A, less than 5 hours, B, 5 to 6 hours, C, 6 to 7 hours, D, 7 to 8 hours, or E, more than 9 hours. So if you do that now, in a few moments, I will come to look at your responses, and that will give us a bit of an idea of how much sleep you are getting at the moment. So, coming to some statistics, so insomnia is thought to affect about 1/3 of the general population in the UK. However, these figures have changed since COVID, as there are reports of widespread impact on sleep, and so this has increased from 1/3 to half of the population struggling with sleep. So you are not alone by any means. You know, there's so many people struggling with sleep right now, and that's why we created this webinar, is we want to help people to improve their sleep. And the good news is that CBT has been found to be a very effective treatment for chronic insomnia. And the results of these studies have found that they found meaningful improvements in sleep diary outcomes. So that's the good news, is that the techniques that we're sharing with you today are very effective. So how much sleep do Britons get? So let's start with the least amount of sleep. So 7% have less than 5 hours sleep. 30% have between 6 and 7 hours. 22% have between 7 and 8 hours sleep. And our biggest cohort is 33% who have 5 to 6 hours of sleep. 7% have between 8 and 9 hours. Now, I don't know about you, but that 8 to 9 hours is quite the goal, isn't it? A lot of people believe that it's important to have at least 8 hours of sleep a night. And as you can see, only 7% manage to achieve that, and 1% have more than 9 hours sleep. So I shared these statistics just to give you a sense of the reality of how much sleep people actually get, and how much, I guess, UK is functioning on how much sleep. So hopefully that's helpful for you, give you a bit of insight into what other people are getting. So how much sleep do you get each night? So let's come along to your responses now. Okay, so most of you have, this is very interesting, every time I've done this poll, the majority of people are liking 5 to 6 hours, which is in line with the amount that the research suggests that most people are getting, between 5 and 6 hours. So it looks like the research is correct based on our little research that we just did there. So thank you for sharing, that's really useful. And hopefully it's useful for you to, I guess, realise that you're not alone. Many people are struggling with that, not being able to get more than 5 to 6 hours. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay. So sleep is essential, and you probably know this already, but we wanted to talk a little bit about why sleep is essential. And just like air and water and food, we can cope without sleep for periods of time, but the longer we are awake, the stronger that urge to sleep becomes. And the function of sleep has long been researched and debated, and most people agree that it serves a restorative purpose, both psychologically and physiologically. It's important for our general physical health, for restoring energy, for repairing injuries or illness, growth, psychological well-being, mood, concentration, memory, work performance, and getting along with others. So it benefits us in so many ways. And so understandably, if we're not getting enough of it, it can be quite frustrating. The amount of sleep we need does vary across our lifetime, and there is variation within each group as well. So as you can see here, newborns need between 12 and 18 hours of sleep. So that's the most amount of sleep we need when we're first born. And then gradually over time it decreases to, you know, when we're teenagers, between 8.5 and 9.5 hours, to when we're adults, to between 7 and 8 hours. And everyone is different, and that depends on a number of factors, but that 7 to 9 hour range does provide a good benchmark to aim towards. And so the majority of Britain is not getting enough sleep. That 5 to 6 hours isn't enough, but it's enough, I suppose, to function. But it's important to recognise that we can all do a bit better. So research tells us that there are 2 types of sleep. We have REM, which is rapid eye movement sleep, and non-REM sleep. Stages 1 to 4 are part of non-REM sleep. So stage 1 is light sleep, and it's that stage between being awake and falling asleep. Stage 2 is the onset of sleep, when we start to become disengaged from our surroundings. Our body temperature drops, our breathing and heart rate becomes regular. Then stages 3 and 4 are the deepest and most restorative, and they're often known as delta sleep. Stage 3 is a transition into that stage 4, which is true delta. And during both of these stages, our blood pressure drops, our breathing becomes slower, our muscles are relaxed and are receiving more blood supply, our tissue growth and repair occurs, and hormones are released, including growth hormone, which is why growing teenagers need much more sleep than grown adults. And it is thought that delta sleep, those stage 3 and 4, is most involved with restoring the body and physical energy, whilst REM sleep is most important for restoring mental function, such as memory and concentration. So as we said earlier, people vary in terms of how much sleep they actually need. And while the average sleep duration for adults is between 6 and 8 hours per night, some people function well with a little less sleep and others with a little more. And whatever your individual needs, lack of sleep or poor sleep quality can have a really big impact, including poor attention and concentration and memory, irritability and other mood disturbances, impaired judgment and reaction time, poor physical coordination, such as being dangerous at driving, hopefully not always, but it's important to recognise that the seriousness of these effects depends on how bad the sleep deprivation is. So, for example, less sleep versus absolutely no sleep. So we might get some sleep, but it's not as much as normal, but it's not none at all. Or one night's sleep versus chronic problems with sleep, and that will determine, I guess, the impact on how we feel. And so if you are have ongoing problems with sleep, then it is really important to seek help. And hopefully some of these strategies that we're going to talk about today are helpful. So what we do is we recommend starting with step 1, which is sleep hygiene and general relaxation. And once you've tried that for a couple of weeks, and if you've noticed that nothing's changing and you're still struggling with sleeping difficulties, then you move on to step 2, which is sleep retraining. And then once you've tried sleep retraining, if that's not working, then moving on to sleep restriction. So let's start with sleep hygiene. So this is the term we use to describe good sleep habits. And considerable research has gone into developing a set of guidelines and tips which are designed to enhance good sleeping. So we can start with making changes to our environment. It's very important that your bed and bedroom are quiet and comfortable for sleeping. A cooler room with enough blankets to stay warm is best, such as 18 degrees, which that's been found to be the optimum temperature for sleep. Make sure you have curtains or an eye mask to block out early morning light, and earplugs if there is noise in the room. We may also need to prepare our body for sleep, so it's really important to avoid consuming any caffeine or nicotine. So caffeine products might be coffee, tea, cola, chocolate, and some medications. and of course cigarettes. And it's important to avoid these at least 4 to 6 hours before going to bed, because these substances act as stimulants and they interfere with our ability to fall asleep. It is also best to avoid alcohol for about 4 to 6 hours before going to bed. Now, many people believe that alcohol is relaxing and helps them get to sleep, and it does at first, but it actually interrupts the quality of sleep. So you'll find yourself waking up more frequently and not getting as good quality sleep throughout the night. So whilst it helps you fall asleep, it's not so good for the rest of sleep. A healthy, balanced diet will help you to sleep well, but timing is really important. Some people find that a very empty stomach at bedtime is distracting. So it can be useful to have a light snack, but a heavy meal can also interrupt sleep. So it's important to get that balance right. Some people recommend a warm glass of water, milk, water as well, but milk specifically because it contains tryptophan, which is a natural sleep inducer. Regular exercise is really good to help with sleep, but try not to do strenuous exercise about 4 hours before bedtime. We recommend morning exercise, go for a morning walk, and that's a great way to start the day feeling refreshed. We also need to prepare our mind for sleep, and you can develop your own rituals of things to do to remind your body that it's time to sleep. So some people find it useful to do relaxing stretches or breathing exercises for 15 minutes before bed each night, or to sit calmly with a cup of caffeine-free tea. A pre-bedtime routine can be helpful to prepare our minds for sleep. And so we're going to talk more about that in a few slides' time. So some factors may have changed during COVID that might be impacting your sleep. So for instance, you might have reduced the amount of exercise as a result, or your bedroom may now be associated with work if you have to work from your room, which may have disrupted your normal associations. And we're going to talk about sleep associations in the sleep retraining technique, so we'll come along to that in a few moments. And finally, with sleep hygiene, we recommend stop trying to sleep. And that's how good sleepers do it. The key is that they don't even think about sleep. As soon as you start to give attention to your sleeplessness, the more this will take over your thinking and the harder it will actually be to fall asleep. So one solution is to have a more accepting approach to being awake. In other words, it's not being awake that is the problem, it's our emotional reaction to being awake. So if you can, try to develop a more relaxed attitude about your sleep. Easier said than done, I know. So relaxation exercises can be really helpful to help you prepare your mind for sleep and let go of some of those thoughts. And the more practice, the more you do it, the more practice you'll get and the better you'll be. So coming along to the pre-bedtime routine, it can be helpful to start preparing your mind for sleep around 60 to 90 minutes before bed. And this period should help you to start unwinding, much like you would do this for a newborn baby, to help them learn to associate a particular routine with sleep. So you can do this too. And one thing that can be quite helpful is putting the day to rest as a signal to your body and mind that it's nearly time to sleep. So things such as putting away your laptop or work things, turning off your email notifications, and then engaging in relaxation activities to help your body get ready for sleep, and your mind, not just your body. And for some people, using an electronic device such as a laptop can make it hard to fall asleep because of the particular light emanating from screens of this type. What this light does is it activates the brain. So if you have trouble sleeping, we recommend that you avoid electronics before bed or in the middle of the night when you're not sleeping. It's best not to pick up your phone. So here is an example of a wind down routine, and it should include things like slowing down your work or other activity and then stopping it completely, and then having some wind down activities before and immediately before bed. So that this is just to give you a general idea of what it could look like. And it can be helpful to spend a bit of time putting the day to rest. So set aside 20 minutes in the early evening where you might reflect on the day, make a to-do list, and put that day to rest. So when you start your evening routine, you're not worrying about all those things that you haven't yet got yet done because you've already put it to rest. So after a period of time of trying the sleep hygiene techniques, we do recommend moving. If it's not working and you're still struggling with sleep, you can move on to step 2, sleep retraining. And after a period of time of sleeplessness and struggling with sleep, our bed and bedtime can often become something that we start to dread. And we might find ourselves thinking about what will happen when we get into bed. And we might be thinking about this throughout the day. And the closer we come to bedtime, we can start to feel increasingly agitated about whether or not we'll get a decent night's sleep. So if this is something you have noticed and the sleep hygiene techniques haven't really helped, it may be necessary for you to use this technique to retrain your brains back into a healthy sleep-wake cycle. So good sleepers, we can learn a lot from good sleepers. They have a strong positive association between going to bed and successful sleep. The best sleepers, as I said, don't even think about sleep and frequently look forward to getting into bed. The good news is we can retrain our minds to break down those negative associations that we've developed over time. And we can develop those positive associations, which will bring us back into a good sleep-wake pattern. When we are experiencing sleeping difficulties, we have less of a positive association between our bed and sleep. Instead, we can develop quite strong negative associations between our bed and sleeplessness, which can lead to frustration and anxiety. And it may be that your associations have changed due to home working or homeschooling. If you don't have much space, it may be that you've had to work in your bedroom or on your bed, and naturally that's going to impact your ability to fall asleep. So what do we do then? Well, it's important to not use your bed for anything other than sleep. So this includes watching TV, reading, eating, talking on the phone, working. The only exception is sexual activity. When we are experiencing sleeping difficulties, we really need to be strict with what we are doing whilst in bed so that we can readdress any negative associations that we have built up. For example, when a good sleeper reads in bed, they may find themselves starting to nod off after only a few pages, whereas a poor sleeper might read in bed and they may be doing this as a way to try to force sleep or as a way of distracting themselves from that frustration that comes with sleeplessness. Therefore, the reading then becomes associated with stress and anxiety. So the most important thing to do is to ban all activities apart from sexual activity from the bedroom, which over time will help to readdress the bed-sleep connection. And this is especially important for activities which are quite mentally stimulating, such as some television programs, working, playing games on our mobile phones or laptops, even surfing the internet. All of these things can be very mentally stimulating. And this also includes not using your bed for working. And as I said, this may be really hard for some of you who do not have an alternative place to work privately. So you may be in a shared flat, so you may not have this option. And if this is the case, try and create a clear distinction between working and your evening. So give yourself a time to stop working and put things away, put your laptop, put your work things away so that they're not in sight. Turn off email notifications, put your phone away and stop your laptop from beeping if possible. And then do something else other than work. and so that you can put your work day to rest and start those that pre-bedtime routine or those other activities that help you wind down, and so you can separate work from your bedroom and going to sleep. One rule is that you can use is the 15-minute rule, and with this we aim to fall asleep within 15 minutes, and most good sleepers will naturally fall asleep within quarter of an hour of going to bed. Lying in bed, tossing and turning and being unable to sleep strengthens that association between being in bed and wakefulness and frustration. So in order to break this connection, if you're not asleep within 15 minutes, you need to get up and go to a different room and do something different until you feel sleepy again. And then when you feel drowsy again, you can get back into bed and give yourself another 15 minutes to fall asleep, and then repeat as often as necessary until you fall asleep. And it's really important that when you do get up that you choose an activity that's not mentally stimulating. So maybe reading a magazine over a book, or light chores rather than surfing the internet or working on a laptop. It can also be helpful to make a distinction between feeling sleepy and tired. Tiredness does not necessarily mean that sleep is going to happen. Sleepiness is a signal from our body that it's time to go to sleep. So things like rather than just feeling tired, we need to see those itchy or irritable eyes, aching muscles, or that involuntary tendency to kind of nod off, or lacking in energy and yawning. And so when you're feeling this way, this is ideally the way you should be feeling when you go to bed. So if you're not feeling sleepy, wait until you are before going to bed. And don't just go to bed because it's bedtime, or because you really want to go to sleep, or because you feel desperate to sleep. It's important that we recognise that difference. Tiredness is something we often feel when our bodies is signalling that we physically need to rest, whereas sleepiness is the signal that our brain is ready to switch off, ready for sleep. And the final rule of sleep retraining is to avoid napping during the day. So it's important to save all of your sleep for nighttime. So this means no napping during the day or the evening. And this can be really difficult if you're experiencing sleep disturbances. However, napping can drastically reduce our drive for sleep at night and that need for sleep. Whereas if we don't nap, then we build that drive for sleep and we're more likely to fall asleep the next evening. So once you've tried sleep hygiene and sleep retraining, we recommend moving on to sleep restriction. Now it works in a way that we decrease the variability in the amount of time we spend trying to sleep, whilst also increasing the depth of sleep. And so we shorten the amount of time we spend in bed in order to consolidate sleep. So we reduce the amount of time we're in bed, so we're only sleeping when we're in bed. And the idea behind this is to improve that sleep-bed connection and also improve the depth of our sleep. And the good news is that it works, and research has shown that sleep restriction therapy is the most effective technique available. However, the bad news is that it takes several weeks of altering your sleep schedule in order to actually see results. And you also may feel sleepier and experience disrupted sleep initially. However, over time, when you stick with it, your insomnia will improve, which is why we recommend this as the kind of final step for improving sleep, because it is quite difficult to do. So it involves putting in place a sleep window, which is our amount of total time in bed that matches the average total sleep time. So what we need to do is keep a 1 or 2 week sleep diary in order to work this out. So for some people, you may have already had a set sleep window, but because of the changes that have happened as a result of being furloughed or COVID, or perhaps working patterns have changed or your shift patterns have changed, and your pre-existing set sleep time may have changed as a result, and so that's why maybe you're struggling with your sleep. So step one is to determine your allowed time in bed. So we need to keep a sleep diary for at least 1 or 2 weeks, and then add up the total amount of hours and divide this number by the number of days recorded. So over a week, you would add them all up each day and then divide it by 7. And then this will give you your current average amount of sleep per night. And this is your new sleep window. So we have an example here of a sleep diary. This is going to be in your slide deck, so I won't spend too much time on this now, but you can have a look at this later on. So record your amount of sleep and how many hours you have each night, and that will give you your sleep window at the bottom here, which is 5.9 hours. We also record your hours in bed because this is important for later on. Stage 2 is to set a wake up time. So once you have your sleep window, which might be 6 hours, you should then choose a morning wake up time to anchor your sleep around. So for example, your ideal wake up time might be 7 AM. It's really important that you wake up at the same time every morning, no matter how much sleep you got the night before. So make sure you choose the time that you can get up every day at that time, because what we're trying to do here is get your body into a regular cycle. And then we set a threshold bedtime. So in order to get this, we subtract our average sleep time, so 6 hours, from your new morning rising time, which is 7 AM. And this will provide you with your threshold bedtime. So in this example, if you count back from 7 AM 6 times, 6 hours, it will be 1 AM as your threshold bedtime. And once you have your threshold bedtime, you have the earliest point at which you can go to bed. We call it the threshold bedtime rather than bedtime, as you do not necessarily need to actually go to bed at this point. It's simply the earliest time you can go to bed, because as we said earlier, you only go to bed when you actually feel sleepy. Step 4 is to stick to this schedule as closely as possible for at least 2 weeks. So if you're sleeping relatively well for those 2 weeks and you're feeling good during the day, then keep this schedule. However, after the 2 weeks, if you're feeling tired during the day, then add another 15 minutes to your bedtime, to your time in bed. So you may be wondering, well, when can I increase my sleep window? So our tip and a recommendation is that once you are sleeping 90% of the time that you are in bed for at least a week, you can then increase your bedtime by 15 minutes, either by going to bed 15 minutes earlier or staying in bed 15 minutes later. And you can use the sleep efficiency calculation to help you work this out. So what you do is you work out your total hours of sleep, so your sleep time, divide that by your total amount of hours in bed, which is why we had it on the sleep diary a few slides ago. And that provides you with your sleep opportunity. And then you times that by 100, which will determine your sleep efficiency. So we have an example here for you. So if you spent 5.9 hours in asleep, but you were in bed for 7.14 hours, times that by 100, and that would give you an 82.63% sleep efficiency. And as we said earlier, it needs to be 90% for you to then change your sleep time. If it's less than 90%, then you need to keep restricting the amount of time you are in bed, and only in bed for the amount of time you're actually asleep. So we have some tips here of how to use steps 2 and 3 together, but I'm not going to go through them now. They're for you to have a read through them later on. So please come back to the slide deck and have a look through these tips to help you achieve these. So as I said earlier, work your way up the steps. Start with step 1 before moving to step 2 or 3. And use all of the advice in these steps. Don't pick and choose. And it's really important that you do everything. And recognise that it takes time and that it may be tough to make these lasting changes. It is difficult to battle insomnia, and it's important to just recognise that you may have bad night's sleep, but even good sleepers have difficult night's sleep. So it's important to remember that. And it can be tough to stick to this, especially the sleep restriction. It's important to be tolerant and kind and patient with yourself as you do this. And we want to kind of talk a bit about shift working before we finish today. And a non-traditional work schedule can be quite disruptive to a person's circadian rhythm or biological clock, because our circadian rhythm regulates our wakefulness and sleepiness. It creates those relatively set times of day throughout a 24-hour period where we feel really tired and also really awake and refreshed. And that circadian rhythm can have really frustrating results or symptoms if it's thrown off. And it can affect sleepiness, alertness, body temperature, hormone levels, hunger. So if you are working in shifts, that may be why you're struggling with sleep. So we have some tips for shift workers. So we recommend that you keep a regular sleep schedule as much as possible, even on your days off. Now, I know that's difficult, but if you're trying to sort your sleep out, then this is a good place to start. If possible, take 48 hours off after a series of shifts to help you readjust things. Wear sunglasses when leaving work to minimise sun exposure. This can help prevent that daytime clock from activating when it's time to wind down, ready for bed. Now, this is slightly different in that with non-shift working, we don't recommend naps, but with shift working, we say go for it. Take those naps when possible. But the same advice, limit caffeine intake 4 hours before bedtime. Maintain a healthy diet rich in fruits and vegetables. Use heavy shades for sleeping to create a dark environment. You probably do that already, but if you don't, get a blackout blind, get it sorted so that you black out that darkness, black out that light. Take a 30 to 60 minute nap right before your shift. Ask family and other living companions to reduce noise by using headphones to watch television or listen to music, or ask them to avoid household chores until you're awake, because naturally those things are going to impact on your sleep. Avoid a long commute if you can, as that can cut into your sleeping hours and cause further drowsiness. Keep nightly rituals before bed, even during the daytime. So even if your bedtime is during the day, keep those same, get a bedtime routine and do that, whether it's a nighttime bedtime or a daytime bedtime. Wear earplugs or use white noise to drown out the sound while you sleep. And then finally, you can purchase a light box for light therapy to expose your eyes to extremely bright but safe light before work if you normally wake up during the night and you don't have the natural sunlight to help wake you up and get you ready for the day. So those are some tips for shift workers. Beyond those, we recommend doing the same process, so working your way up from step 1 to step 3 and using some of these ideas to kind of weave in amongst it. So some take-home messages. We need between 6 and 9 hours of sleep. But everyone is different. We can make changes to our environment and body to maximize our sleep. So starting a pre-bedtime routine around 60 to 90 minutes before bed, or if sleep does not come within 15 minutes, get out of bed and go to another room. Avoid napping completely unless you work shifts. And having a look at your sleep efficiency can help to improve your sleep. And so those are the things that you need to go away with today. So finally, we have a poll here. We'd like you to choose one idea from the webinar that you will action over the next week. So using the Q&A function again, please select which one you will try. So A, try out the pre-bedtime routine. B, remember that bed is for sleep only. C, use that 15-minute rule. So after 15 minutes, make sure you get out of bed. D, avoid napping. Or E, work out your sleep window. So we'll come back to your responses in a few moments. I just want to highlight what else is in your sleep pack. Also, while you do your poll, if you do have any questions that you'd like answered by me at the end of the webinar, we'll be coming to the end shortly. And so if you have a question in mind, it might be a good idea to type that in now, as I'll come to those in a few moments. Some things for you to try for yourself. Have a look at having a go at this 5 areas model to break down your own difficulties with sleep and try and work out what's going on. It has some prompt questions to help you to understand what's going on. Here is a blank sleep diary for you to use, or use something similar. And here is a calculation. So basically an example of how to work out your own sleep window and then threshold bedtime. So have a look at this, and that will hopefully help you to work it out for yourself. Coming up, we have more webinars planned from August. So in August, we have the Keeping Well for Health and Care Workers being started again on a Wednesday at 12 p.m. And we changed the time as we were hoping to be able to offer it to people who maybe couldn't attend at 4 p.m. Also on a Thursday at 4 p.m. So we're still going to be using this slot, but we're going to be introducing new topics. So we're going to be introducing mindfulness, working from home and staying well. And we have a specific BAME webinar for managing wellbeing as well. On top of the current series that we started. So we're starting again. So if you missed any of them, then please sign up for those here. You may have witnessed or experienced some really distressing scenes over the past few months, and these may be really impacting you now. So you may notice that you're having flashbacks or nightmares, and it may feel like you're right back there reliving it all over again. And you might find you're having really uncontrollable thoughts about the event. This is really normal, a normal reaction to a traumatic experience, and these symptoms can last a few weeks. However, if it has been a few months since the event and you're still experiencing some of these symptoms, then it will be really important for you to seek support. These symptoms are easily treated with the right help, so please get help, and it is available for you. IAPT psychological therapy services are available and free if you feel like you need more help. So they offer treatments over the telephone or online or through video therapy. If you feel like you need support for low mood, sleep difficulties, depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And you can find your local IAPT service by using this link and typing your postcode in. It will help you find your local IAPT service. If you need urgent help for your mood, then please seek support. We recommend if you go to your GP. If you can't wait to see a doctor or you feel unable to keep yourself safe, then we recommend the Samaritans or the Samaritans and NHS Wellbeing Support Line, or Shout, who offer a confidential 24/7 crisis text service. And if you're not sure what help you need, then you can use this link to help you to find some guidance on what help might be available. Here are some other useful resources and link. The main one to kind of be aware of is the Sleepio one. It's an online sleep improvement program which is really useful, and if you want to have a bit more guidance on your sleep difficulties. Oh, well, that's not good, is it? 2 slides that are the same. Sorry about that. I'll make sure I delete that before we put it up on the slide deck. And finally, we really value your feedback and would love to hear your thoughts about the webinar today. So please use this link, and you can do this now as we're going to paste it into the Q&A box. And so click on the link and then leave some feedback and let us know how you found today's webinar. And also, if you have a question, please add that to the Q&A as well, as we will leave the remaining time now for questions. So that is the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for your interaction today, and hopefully it's been really useful. I'm going to come across to the questions and hopefully I can answer some of them. So I'm going to scroll down and see what we can find. Okay. How can one get a good night's sleep with menopause, heat and cold flushes that wake you up? Yes, hot flushes. I suppose it's thinking about your room temperature, and it's thinking about layering. So having multiple blankets that you can take off if you're having a hot flush, or an extra blanket if you're having a cold flush. That could be helpful. Having maybe a cold flannel by the side of your bed, or some water, that can help, because naturally if you're awoken by a hot flush, then you can use that to cool you down. But beyond that, specifically for menopause, I recommend speaking with your GP, and still use all of the hygiene tips to help you get back to sleep. So use these techniques to help you, because it may be that you're being woken up by the menopause hot flushes, but actually your thoughts are keeping you awake. So it may be using these strategies to help you go back to sleep, even though you might be waking up. I would like to do the 15-minute rule. However, this may affect my partner's sleep. Yes, it might. And then this is often an obstacle for people putting this in place. So I guess it's problem solving what you can do around this. So maybe thinking about your partner wearing earplugs, earplugs. But actually you're going to be less, in some ways you might be less disruptive if you're not tossing and turning in the same bed. If you leave and then just slip back quietly when you're sleepy, that might be less disruptive. Maybe keep the light off in the hallway, so that, or in the next room, so that it doesn't wake them up, maybe. But maybe have a think about it with your partner and see what they would like you to do, or maybe try it and see how it goes. It may not be as bad as you think. Any advice on what to do if you wake up during the night needing the loo? Once I'm awake, I can't seem to get back to sleep. I've tried restricting fluid intake in the evening, but it doesn't help. So for this problem, I recommend you doing the 5 areas model to work out why you can't get back to sleep. So is it because your mind is on overdrive? Is it because you're worrying about not being able to get back to sleep? Is it because you're hot? I don't know. Have a go at that 5 areas model as soon as you can after you've woken up, to try and work out what's going on. And then you can try and think about how to problem solve that. So if it's your thoughts racing, then I recommend mindfulness. So come along to our mindfulness webinar on the what date was it? It was, sorry, the 6th of August. So come along to that, and that will help you with some techniques to help to turn down the noise of your mind when it's racing before you're trying to sleep. So hopefully that's helpful. I get very tired at night, go to bed, and then I'm not able to sleep. This does not help with my long-term health condition. Yes, so I guess this might be the distinction between tiredness and sleepy. So maybe trying to work out what it is, whether you're tired physically and you need to rest, and then wait until you're sleepy tired. So it might be that distinction, because if you're lying in bed awake because you're not actually sleepy, you're still getting the rest, but you're not sleeping. And it may be that you've got that negative sleep association with your bed. So naturally, when you're in bed, your body has learnt to not sleep. So it might be just, if you try the other steps first and then get to sleep restriction, it may be that simply restricting the amount of time you spend in bed to when you are asleep only might help with that. Alternatively, I recommend exercise, and it may be something that you're not doing because of your long-term health condition. and that may mean that you're not, although you feel physically tired, you may need to make yourself more tired so your body feels more able to sleep. And it can be difficult with long-term health difficulties to work out what exercise is best. Things like yoga can be really good, walking if you can, and just maybe talk to your GP or a physio to help you work out what exercises you can do. I recommend, if you do have a long-term health condition and you're struggling with sleep or other difficulties, IAPT services can be really helpful, as they do have long-term health condition groups or therapy, individual therapy, where they can help you to manage the long-term health condition and how that might impact your sleep or anxiety or mood. And so that having that specific support might be useful. I think that's all we have time for today in terms of the questions, but thank you so much for your questions and your interaction today. I really hope you found our webinar useful, and if you have, please give us feedback and let us know. Equally, if you haven't and there's something about the webinar that you've not found useful, please let us know, because we are changing these webinars and we're developing them every week, so please let us know. Hopefully we'll see you again in our future webinars, but until then, all the best. Take care. Bye.